Well, day 2 of the NFL draft is now in the books, and the Seahawks have added 4 new players to their roster. They started the day with 5 picks. They end up with 4. My reaction to what they did today, how those players fit, what I think of the group as a whole, and why I think the Seahawks might be the most interesting team in the league as we go to bed tonight. Looking forward to day 3 tomorrow. That's coming up next on Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Welcome in, everybody. I'm Dan. This is Seahawks Forever. Subscribe to the channel. Of course, hit the bell for notification of future episodes. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Seahawks Forever. And if you want to support the show in any of the more tangible ways, you can do so at the links listed below in the description. This one's going to be quick and easy. Just finished up, 3.5 hour live stream the entire day 2. If you want to go back and watch that, it was a lot of fun. I was joined by Bill Alvstad at the beginning. And then we got to react to the Seahawks trading way up in the second round. We'll get to that in a second and react to that with Bill. And then his co-host from the Seahawks Playbook podcast, Keith Myers, joined me later to kind of take me home. And we also got to see Casey McLean of the Poor Sports podcast. And he was a lot of fun as well. So check that out for sure. But just wanted to give you my overall thoughts on the day. Of course, the selection yesterday at 18 of Gray Zabel, the guard out of NDSU, Mike McDonald, confirming today he will start out at left guard for the Seahawks. But we get into today and we had some needs, right? Defensive tackle, tight end, possibly. Wide receiver was a big focus. Maybe some more help along the offensive line. Maybe cornerback. Some question about could Reek Woolen potentially be on the trade block. And, I talked about it last night a little bit, and certainly at the beginning of our live stream today, about how content could John Schneider be sitting there and watching all those players that they like so much going off the board between pick 33 to start the day today and pick 49 before they picked at 50. They had the 2 picks at 50 and 52 to start the day. And Schneider kind of tipped his hand yesterday in the press conference following round 1. He started talking about how there were a lot of players on the board that he liked. And then he caught himself and he said, I almost said too much. I think what he was going to say, what he held back from saying is, there's some players left that have first round grades on our board. And if that sounds strange to you, let me explain it to you this way. Every team has different parameters. They all have different ideas about what a first round grade entails. Now, they don't have 32 first-round grades. It never works that way. In a typical year, usually 18 to 20. And what I mean by that is not just when teams assign first-round grades, it's not just players that they believe are worthy of going in this year's first round. But to earn a first-round grade, you have to be a player they think is worthy of being a first-round pick in any given year. 2 years ago, the Seahawks selected Derek Hall in the second round with the 37th pick, the 5th pick of the second round. He was a first-round grade on their board. Now, he probably wasn't a first-round grade on every team. How do we know that? Because he lasted until the 37th pick. Teams view players differently. I felt like that's what he was telling us last night, and that was certainly evidenced today because it only took 2 picks to get into the second round before the Seahawks came all the way up from 52, not 50, but 52, moved up to 35, in a trade with Tennessee. They gave up pick 82, one of their third rounders, to take Nick Emenwari, the safety out of South Carolina. You all know about this guy. You've learned about him through the process. A size, speed, height, weight freak. He's been compared because of his physical dimensions to both Kyle Hamilton and Cam Chancellor. Now, I think those are really unrealistic, unfair comparisons. He's not quite that player, but man, he sure can be. Blew up the combine, 6'3", 220, a 91 overall athleticism score, a 4.38 40, a 1.49 10-yard split, a 43-inch vertical jump, an 11.6 broad jump. I mean, this guy is a physical freak. Considered more of a box safety than a coverage safety, that's the role I expect him to be in. If you're asking yourself, wait a minute, we have 2 good safeties. We like Julian Love and we like Kobe Bryant. Had a breakout year last year. The Seahawks are going to be talking about extending him soon, right? He's part of the future. And you're wondering, why would we take a safety? Why would we trade up to take another safety? Well, first of all, Mike McDonald has a history of using 3 safeties. Did it last year. The intention when they signed Rayshon Jenkins and Kayvon Wallace was they were going to play safety along with Julian Love in a lot of packages, with one of the safeties kind of playing in the box, covering tight ends, playing the middle of the field, basically playing a big nickel. It's becoming a little more in vogue now around the league, covering tight ends and being able to move around, be that chess piece for Mike Macdonald, rush off the edge, be more physical, hold down the middle of the field, make it tougher for the McVays and the Shanahans of the world to run those dig routes and pluck us to death in the middle of the field like Matt Stafford has done so often over the last couple of years. Now, you've heard me on this show before. You might think, wait a minute, Dan, I didn't think you were really in on Emmanwori. I have some reservations about, is he the player that fans think he is because of the freakish nature of his athleticism? And are the comps to Cam Chancellor a little more unrealistic? Like, Cam Chancellor was an elite enforcer and physical player. Emmanwori has some of that in him, but I wouldn't put him there yet. And then I had some hesitations. We've seen freak athletes come along at the safety position before. We've seen them be connected to the Seahawks. Remember Melifonwu out of Connecticut 4 years ago? Similar profile. Never really became much. Didn't amount to much in Detroit. Signed with Miami this offseason for a cheap one-year deal. But at 35, I didn't like him at 18, but at 35, it's a home run. I would expect that we're going to hear at the end of the round tonight, if it's not happening already, the post-draft press conference with Mike Macdonald and John Schneider. First of all, I can't wait to hear Mike Macdonald rave about this guy. I think he's going to be pretty enthused. But I bet you John Schneider's going to tell us they had a first-round grade on him. So they get 2 first-round players. Seahawk Nerd, who we've been following each other on Twitter for a long time. He does such a great job of analyzing the draft on his own. He really dives in and does a lot of work on it. Made a great point. He said, if you had told me that the Seahawks took Nick Emmanwori at 18 and then traded up to 35 to take Gray Zabel, those 2 players would have matched almost perfectly the consensus big board rankings for both of them. So if you don't like the value of either one at either pick, flip them around, makes a ton of sense. 2 big needs, 2 elite level players. We'll get into that in a second. Now at pick 50, a pick that confused some people. They go with Elijah Arroyo. It's not Arroyo. It's Arroyo out of Miami. 6'5", 250 pounds, 33-inch arms, outstanding athlete. One of the most gifted, in fact, you could make an argument, the most gifted pass-catching tight end in this draft from a physical standpoint, second to Colson Loveland. Mason Taylor, close. He was drafted ahead of him. But Arroyo is a guy, dynamic pass-catching ability. Not a liability as a blocker. It's not his strength, but it's something he can do when you need him to. Well, why a tight end? Got a lot of that in the comments in the live stream. Why a tight end? Why a tight end so early? Noah Fant, last year of his deal, $13.5 million cap hit, right? We're still kind of waiting for him to really be unlocked and deliver on the promise of his athletic upside. A.J. Barner, we love what he did as a rookie. Good, solid two-way tight end, solid blocker, solid in the pass game, but no elite traits. Not a twitchy runner. He's not going to be a dynamic pass catcher. He's just going to be that solid, think John Carlson, right? Kind of tight end you want on your roster. And then they signed Joe Schubert from the San Francisco 49ers, who Clint Kubiak's familiar with from his 1 year there. Good scheme fit, but he's 31 years old. It's a one-year deal. He's a stopgap. So they have 3 guys, 2 of which are on expiring contracts. Clint Kubiak plays as much 12 and 13 personnel as anyone in the league. That's 2 and 3 tight ends. So you need 3 really good ones. Brady Russell's not in the mix anymore. He's been converted to fullback full-time. Conferred by the Seahawks earlier this week. They've even changed his listing on the roster. Wide receivers in need, right? You like JSN and Cooper Kupp, what they can do, but they're more slot guys than outside guys. Elijah Arroyo can fill some wide receiver duties and roles. He is going to be a mismatch for defenses. And when you think about past defenses now, trying to get ready to play the Seahawks, especially if you've improved that pass protection, which I think they have, Cooper Kupp, JSN doing what he does. Elijah Arroyo now stressing and trying to cover him with a safety, with a linebacker. That's a mismatch. I'm not going to say Travis Kelce is his comp or his ceiling, but he can cause Travis Kelce type problems for a defense. Now, there's a concern with him. He only played the 1 year really at Miami because he had some ongoing sort of on again, off again knee issues his first couple of years at Miami. There's been medical concerns, and that scares a lot of fans. I heard a lot about that today in the comments. I'll just say this. The Seahawks have been as conservative and hesitant to draft players in recent years that have any kind of medical concerns. Like they didn't draft Will Johnson despite his elite upside because of those reports of maybe a lingering long-term knee issue. They didn't draft Siobhan Revell, a corner who absolutely fit the Mike McDonald standard and looked like a Seahawk player, a guy that would have been a first-round pick this year without the ACL injury. He lasted all the way into the third round. They stay away from players that they're not satisfied with medicals. They had to have been satisfied with Arroyo's. I got to get that down. We got to practice that, you guys, with his medicals. I think it's a really exciting pick. And then at 92, after we saw the quarterbacks fall, Shadur Sanders continuing to fall, the third round's still going on. I don't know if he's still been picked. The Seahawks select JALEN MILROE at 92. I'm not going to spend 10 minutes talking about him here because if you watch my show, you've heard me talk about him. There's a whole episode I devote to this issue that I did about 2 weeks ago. Go back and watch that. It explains everything perfectly in depth. I went to the Senior Bowl. You heard me report throughout the week that I was as concerned as anyone with his throwing that week, the intermediate stuff. It's a work in progress. It's a mechanical issue. I said at the time, he looks like a project. Let him be someone else's project. This is after, the Seahawks had made the move for Sam Darnold, right? So, or no, he hadn't. Had that happened yet? No, I don't think it had. Now I'm getting my timelines confused. Anyway, at 92, JALEN MILROE makes a ton of sense, and here's why. First of all, drafting quarterbacks is a crapshoot. Whether it's in the top 10, the first round, the second round, the third round, the fifth round. It's a crapshoot. The hit rate on quarterbacks, the bust rate is astronomical. Even in the top 10, more quarterbacks fail than make it. But it's the most important position on the field. You have to take shots. Every quarterback choice is a risk. I love Cam Ward as a prospect. Titans are taking a risk, taking him at number 1. New Orleans Saints took Tyler Shuck. That's a risk. The Giants move up to get Jackson Dart. Brian Daboll loves him, and Brian Daboll knows a thing or two about quarterbacks. He developed Josh Allen. That's a risk. It's all a risk. And the chances are they're not going to become great starters in the NFL. But what you bank on, what you take a shot on, is traits. And JALEN MILROE is an elite athlete, an elite runner. It's a direct quote from Daniel Jeremiah. Elite. Like he's a more dynamic runner and quicker twitch athlete than Lamar Jackson. He's also an elite deep ball thrower, the best deep ball thrower in this draft. Something happens. His mechanics are great when he throws the ball down the field. And forget about the reports of, small hands. Like I saw him up close. I saw the ball come out of his hand. It jumps. He has a cannon. The intermediate game is a mechanical issue. He stands flat-footed sometimes. He doesn't get off his back foot. His lower half isn't married to his top half. Now, what I did see was a big step forward between the Senior Bowl and the Combine. He's been doing the work. He looked a lot better. And oh, by the way, 65% completions at Alabama. You know who came out of college with significantly lower completion percentages? Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Like those guys were projects. Bills fans, go back and watch tape of the draft when the Bills took, what they take? They take him at 7 or 11. Bills fans were booing the Josh Allen selection. And that was a top 10 pick. JALEN MILROE at 92 is worth the risk. He's not a guy that you want to play right away. I would have been concerned about him if he had gone to Pittsburgh, for example, because they would have probably wanted him to play right away. He's not ready for that. He needs a couple of years to sit. Doesn't have to play in Seattle. Sam Darnold was brought in to be the guy. That's option number 1. They believe he is a franchise quarterback and will be the long-term answer. If he's not, we'll have that discussion later. But then they also bring Drew Lock in, sign him to a 2-year deal. They're set there. JALEN MILROE doesn't have to play quarterback for this team or even be in the starter discussion at all. So forget about that. And if you're worried about value, like we took a 3rd-round pick on a guy that might not. Russell Wilson was drafted in the 3rd round. There was zero guarantee he was going to become the player that he did. They went out and signed Matt Flynn that offseason, and they still had Tavares Jackson. Now, Jalen Milroe is not going to do what Russell Wilson did. He's not going to show up to camp and impress everybody and become the starter and beat out Sam Darnold. It's not going to happen. But that's why it's a safer pick. I don't care about the value. Quarterbacks are worth taking risks on. John Schneider has only taken 2 in his career up until this point, and that's a mistake. He should have been taking shots on guys throughout the years. I also think I feel good enough about the roster as a whole and about what they did in the first 91 picks to address the biggest needs. Gave you the luxury of taking this chance. But here's the real kicker. If Jalen Milroe was being selected under all the parameters that I just laid out, and he was a guy that you were just going to stash for a couple years to maybe see if you could develop him, then I would question this pick and the value of it when there's some real needs on the defensive line still remaining and some good players left on the board. A lot of depth there. There's needs still at wide receiver. There's still some interesting players on the board. There's some depth there. Jalen Milroe is going to help the Seahawks win games in 2025. When Clint Kubiak was announced and introduced in his first press conference as offensive coordinator of the Seahawks, he was asked early in that press conference, hey, what was your secret on third downs last year? Because even though the New Orleans Saints were ravaged by injuries on offense, particularly on the offensive line, they were pretty good on third down. What made you so good there? What was your secret? Is it the scheme? Is it your play calling? And he said, Taysom Hill. When you have Taysom Hill, you're going to be pretty good on third down. You're going to be pretty good in the red zone. Jalen Milroe was not drafted as a stash and develop prospect. I fully expect, if it hasn't happened already, you're going to hear from John Schneider today. They might be a little coy about it. Well, we'll see how it works out. There's a plan. He's going to play in certain situations. Might only be 2-3 snaps a game. We saw it up close a couple years ago in New Orleans. Taysom Hill absolutely single-handedly ravaged the Seahawks. Throwing the ball, running the ball out of Wildcat quarterback, lining up next to Sam Darnold in shotgun or in pistol, lining up in the slot, motioning back into the backfield, taking direct handoffs, third and short, getting out on the edge. Linebackers can't catch this guy. Edges can't beat this guy to the corner. And he's not small. He is a thickly built, strong dude. You could do the tush-push thing if you feel good about your concept there. But he can also, you know what, when you think he's going to run it, he could stand up and throw it on you too. He's going to impact games in 2025. He's also going to make the preseason maybe one of the most fun preseasons we've seen in a very, very long time. I would absolutely give this draft an A. The only thing keeping me from giving it an A+, I'm a little nervous about the fact they haven't addressed the defensive line at this point. Wide receiver too, but there's some guys in this draft mixing and matching later on that I think they'll get someone. There's some guys that I thought were second round picks that are still available at wide receiver. But we'll wait till tomorrow to see how that goes and talk about those guys. But I think overall this is an A. I think this has the makings of the best draft that John Schneider has put together since 2012-13, because all 4 of these prospects, I told you I'd tie it up with this and bring you back to this point. All 4 of these prospects share a common bond. They all possess elite traits, elite upside. I would bank on upside all day long instead of drafting for floor. When the Seahawks got into trouble from 2015 to 19 and they had all those bad drafts in a row, I think they drafted for need and they drafted for floor. They went for safety. They went for upside with this draft. But lo and behold, they also were able to manage to draft for need as well and fill needs. Nick Emmanwori is almost a 2-for-1 player, because if he's going to play in the box and if he's going to be that big nickel and play some slot stuff, and it relieves Devin Witherspoon of having to do that almost full time. So you now gain a boundary corner in Devin Witherspoon being able to be physical on the outside. Arroyo gives you almost a combo, almost a glorified wide receiver that can be a mismatch in the passing game. Gray's able, holds down that left guard spot. I think he has Pro Bowl potential in his future. I think he's a plug-and-play starter at left guard. He also gives you personality edge, attitude, nastiness that line lacks. They're kind of vanilla in the way they go about things and their personality. Absolutely stoked for what John Schneider's been able to pull off, using those assets, moving up and down the board. And now we look ahead to tomorrow. They have a fourth, 2 fifths, and 2 sevenths. 137, 172, 175, 223, 234. You're worried about the nose tackle position? Tons of them. It's a deeper nose tackle group. Guys over 320, 325, 330, deeper at that position than we've seen in a long time. There's also a bunch of guys left that can kind of move around, play a bunch of different positions. Ty Robinson from Nebraska, Josh Farmer from Florida State, provided, of course, those guys weren't taken in the last 5-6 picks when I started recording this. There's a bunch of depth at wide receiver. I'm not worried about them addressing some needs tomorrow, and also we can still probably add one more to the offensive line group. I'd like to see either an interior guy that can play center and guard, or a tackle who can maybe play both sides and project longer term potentially as a guy that can succeed Abe Lucas if they were to move on from him after next year. Let me just take a quick pick before I go and just see if any of those guys I just mentioned have been taken. Ty Felton, wide receiver. I liked him out of Maryland. Savion Jones, edge, LSU. Jared Wilson, the center, out of Georgia, went at 95. One of the storylines of the draft, Shadur Sanders, not drafted yet. Going into day 3, still not drafted. Dylan Gabriel, drafted by the Browns at 94 before Shadur Sanders. Tons of guys that I still like for tomorrow. I'm not going to live stream during the draft tomorrow. Going to get up early, head over and hang out, watch it with a buddy. I will do a full recap show tomorrow night after the draft. Until then, let me know down in the comments what you think. How do you feel about the draft? Most of all, I want to know some guys that you like that haven't been taken yet on day 3. I'll give you this little tidbit. Spoke with Jackson Slater today, the center and guard out of Sacramento State, the kid from Newport High School. He had an outstanding week at the Senior Bowl. He's met with the Seahawks multiple times. Senior Bowl, Combine, top 30 visit. Reached out to him today. He said he thought the way that things went early in the draft for the interior offensive line, he might have had a chance to go today at the back end of the 3rd round. He is still available, which makes it even more interesting because he did tell me if he gets to the 4th round, he thinks he might be in play for the Seattle Seahawks there. I would push back on that, though. I think because they take the risk, because they kind of go and throw the curveball a little bit and take Milroe when they did there at 92, which is, I'm sure we're going to hear tonight, was just a case of they looked up at their draft board. He was the top guy there. They had him graded high. Also, by the way, I didn't mention this, 2-time captain in Alabama, A-plus character, hardest worker in the building, absolute Seahawk through and through, smart, tough, dependable, never have to worry about Jalen Milroe. Because they did that, kind of a luxury pick, I would expect them to address a bigger need in the 4th round, wide receiver or defensive line, possibly even taking 2 defensive linemen tomorrow. So we'll check back in tomorrow. Follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. Subscribe to the show, of course. If you want to support it, all the links are down below. Till tomorrow, man, I'm going to sleep well tonight. This was fun. I'll see you then. Forever and always, go Hawks. Thanks for watching.